Hi, and welcome to Apollo TV. I'm Steve Roitstein. This is a video to help students in my MIDI Electronic Music 1 class deal with the correlation of written music notation to pulse per quarter note in a digital audio workstation such as Pro Tools First. This that you're looking at is a written piece of music, and if you're used to reading music, then you could probably kind of decipher what's going on here. Not exactly the most simple piece of music in the world, but not excessively complicated. And it does have some tuplets here, these triplets of 3/8 notes that are supposed to fit into the time of one quarter note. If you're not used to reading music that much, let's not stress about that. Let's just get started and see how it goes. I'm going to start out by going to the assignment page of the class. And by the way, if you're not a student at Miami Dade College, I hope you enjoy this video. And whoever you are watching this video, if you would like to subscribe to the channel and click the little bell, that would be very much appreciated, because you will then be notified when any new content is uploaded, whether it has to do with electronic music or sound recording or music business. It's all going to be on here. So nice to have you along anyway. This assignment page that you need to follow if you're going to be doing this assignment for the class explains everything pretty much step by step. I'm going to kind of skip around because this instructional video is sort of another way of learning it. You should have hopefully read chapter 11 in the textbook, and it explains here that the correlation between pulse per quarter note, PPQ, is important for you to understand the way that the grid and quantization works in Pro Tools First or any other digital audio workstation. So let's kind of jump around a little bit. I'm going to start by starting a new file in Pro Tools First. I already opened the program, so that saves a little bit of time. I'm going to go to the File menu, choose Create New, and I've got to give it a name, so I'm going to give it a name according to the class file naming standards. First initial, last name. You're obviously going to use your first initial and last name, and the name of the project is Tuplets. If you look for that word on the internet, there are some YouTube videos explaining tuplets and duplets. There's a Wikipedia page. We don't need to get too deep into that now. I'll kind of explain it in a practical way as we go along. I'm going to make sure, and I suggest you do the same for Pro Tools First. We're going to uncheck this preference back up to cloud. We're just going to keep things here saved and backed up locally on the computer. I'm not going to save what I was using before. And it opened up a nice brand spanking new blank session. All right, so we've got a session opened. It's telling me to download the tuplets.mid standard MIDI file attached to the page. I've already done that. And we already created the file and did all that stuff. So now we're going to go to step 4. In the File menu, choose Import. Okay, Pro Tools First, File menu, Import. And I'm going to find wherever it is. Here it is, tuplets.mid. Click Open. Now I've got some choices to make. I like this default opening in an instrument track because a MIDI file needs a sound to play on, so I might as well already start with an instrument track. And we're going to locate this MIDI file to start at the beginning of the session. And we're also going to import the tempo map from a MIDI file. So you want to make sure it says new tracks, go to an instrument track as opposed to a MIDI track, that the location is session start, and that import tempo map from MIDI file is checked. Click OK, and boom, we have a session with stuff in it now. And you can see, by the way, that the default tempo of 120 beats per minute has been changed to the tempo that comes with the standard MIDI file of 88 beats per minute. If I press play now, we're not going to hear anything because although you can see we have clips here, we have a MIDI clip for the kick track and we have a MIDI clip for the snare. There's no instruments here, and those are because this is proprietary information, you know, which plug-in and that sort of thing belongs to a particular application. A standard MIDI file is kind of like a text file. It's just got the raw text. It doesn't have any formatting of fonts, paragraphs, things like that. But we do have some very useful stuff like this performance of the kick and the snare is there. The names of the tracks and the tempo and maybe a few other things here and there, but that's pretty much what we have. So the next step, and I'm not going to jump back and forth between the assignment page unless I need to, is to go to this insert column here and kind of like give this instrument track a virtual instrument. Multi-channel plug-in is the way we're going. Instrument, expand, and then up pops this nice expand unit. The default sound we're not going to use. I'm going to click there, and instead I'm going to choose the drums bank and kicks menu. So that's for our kick part. I'm going to close that. I'm going to do something very similar to the snare track. Once again, just for practice, click in this Insert A, multi-channel plugin, instrument, expand, same deal, except for this time we're going to replace the default sound with the same bank of drums but a different program, the snares menu. Now, I'm kind of too zoomed out for my comfort. I don't need to see that much, so I'm going to zoom in so that I can see the separate bars. Now, across this timeline, I can see bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, and I'm just going to hope. Let's see if it works. I'm at the beginning. I'm going to press play. I'm hearing kick and snare. Kick on 1 and 3. And if you zoom in a little bit, it becomes even more obvious. Now I'm zoomed in, and this part that I'm selecting here is just bar 1. Bar 1, beat 1, kick. Bar 1, beat 2, snare. Bar 1, beat 3, kick. Bar 1, beat 4, snare. And the same pattern is repeated for the whole clip. So it's very simple, commonly heard drum beat. What we call kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4. Sounds like that. All right. Got a sense of music there. Now the idea is right now, because I've done a little bit of work, I want to go ahead and save on my Mac. It's Command S. Is to implement this pattern for a hi-hat. 4 bars of quarter note triplets, etc., etc. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to show you kind of a quick way to set up, well, slightly quicker way to set up a MIDI hi-hat part. If I go to this snare track and I hold down the control key and click on the name of the snare track, one of my options here is duplicate. I'm going to choose that. I just want one duplicate. I do not need the playlist, so I don't need this clip because we're going to create our own. Automation, we don't really have any, but the rest of it is okay. I'm just going to click OK. And unfortunately, I had them both selected, so I'm going to actually delete the kick one because I made a little mistake there. Oops, I deleted them both because I had them both selected. So let me make sure I just have one selected and do it over. Control, click, duplicate, no active playlist needed. Okay, now we have a single track. I'm going to rename that by double-clicking here and call this one hat. All right, so now we have a separate hi-hat track. It does have the expander already there, so that saves a step. What it doesn't have is the proper program. So I'm going to click here. And instead of snares menu, I'm going to go down to drums. And this time I'm going to choose hi-hats menu. I call it hat for short. If you had a MIDI keyboard hooked up, you could press record enable and start playing around on your MIDI keyboard and triggering that sound just like you could on these other instrument tracks. There's another video which shows you how to turn your Mac keyboard into a MIDI keyboard. And if you want to do that, you can. For this lesson, I'm going to just use the MIDI editor and the pencil tool, even though I could play it in real time. Well, in order to use the MIDI editor, I have to be able to see it. You can go to the view menu and choose MIDI editor, and there it is. And this is for the hat. And in case I'm not sure, I can just click on some of these and realize, yeah, these are hi-hats. I'm going to grab my pencil tool because in a minute I need to be ready to draw. For a musician that plays keyboards, drawing in your notes is probably not the most intuitive way to do it, but sometimes it comes in handy, particularly if you see a rhythm that's written in music or you just want to kind of create a rhythm that you can't play. Now we're seeing bar 1, 2, 3, 4 in the MIDI editor view. I want you to choose a note that is not like that, not a long open hi-hat, but something short. I like this B flat 2, so I'm going to use that for mine. Now, what the assignment page is saying is 4 bars of quarter note triplets. All right. So how does that translate to pulse per quarter note? Well, it's a little tricky on this first one, so I'm going to show you manually. First thing I would like to do is change the grid. So I'm going to change the grid to, I think it's half notes, and adding the triplet. No, that wasn't it. It's actually quarter notes. I should have taken myself literally. Quarter note triplets. So now you can see the grid is set to quarter note triplets. And the value of a note that is a quarter note triplet note is equal to 640 ticks or pulses. And if you look down here, you can see that one segment is exactly 640. A quarter note in Pro Tools, in this version that we have now, is worth 960 ticks. Well, I can't select a quarter note right now because the grid is on quarter note triplet and it won't allow me, but I can select a half note. And that's showing me it's 2 beats. If I change the grid back for a second just to prove my point and took off the triplet and we're just at straight quarter notes, it's showing me that I can now select just a quarter note, and that's a beat. It doesn't display as a beat because 960 ticks is a beat. It's kind of like this concept of pennies. Like this column here, this ticks or pulse column, is kind of like pennies. So if you have 99 pennies in your pocket, if you want to write that as a decimal, you're going to write that 0.99. As soon as you have one more penny in your pocket, now that's 100 pennies. You wouldn't write that as 100 because that's 10 cents. You don't want to get ripped off for 90 cents. As soon as you have 100 pennies, automatically it shows as $1, 1.00. And this is kind of the same concept. If I went in here and I actually typed 0 beats and 959 pulses, it's going to show us that exactly. As soon as I type in 960, which is equal to a quarter note, and I hit return, it's a beat. So at that point, anything smaller than 960, 959 or less is going to register as 0 measures, 0 beats, and however many pulses there are. But once it hits 960, it's a beat. So now that's what we're looking at here. And the reason it's important to know this number 960 is because everything is done with math. It's a very convenient number because it's divisible by many different numbers. So if you need to do a tuplet, let's say you needed to take, I don't know, in this case, we're going to need to do an 8th note triplet. So what you would do is you would, if you had to do the math, which you're not going to need to, but just for fun, I'm going to type in here 960 divided by 3. Oops, what did I do wrong? 960 divided by 3 equals 0. That doesn't make any sense. What am I doing wrong here? Is anyone here good at math? I hope so. 960 divided by 3 equals. Something's wrong. I don't know what. If you're good at math, you'll figure it out. We don't even need to go that far because Pro Tools first does the work for us. And I'm going to show you exactly how. So let's go back to this grid, and we're going to keep it on quarter notes, and we're going to add, once again, the triplet. And since I did that, now you can see that every measure, every bar, as Pro Tools calls it, has 6 segments to it. So the grid won't let you draw in anything that doesn't adhere to that grid. This is the note I'm going to use. You can use whichever one you like, as long as it's not an open hi-hat sound. And I've got the pencil tool here. I'm about to draw in a note that is set to quarter note triplets, but the key here to make this assignment easy is in this area where you're choosing the defaults to what you're drawing. Make sure you go all the way down to the bottom here, and instead of choosing a particular value, just tell Pro Tools to follow the grid. And that's going to make the assignment a lot easier. So follow grid. And we've got here a velocity of 127. I think that's a good idea. Have it nice and loud. All right, so here's my note down here. That B flat 2. I think if I just click here on the B flat 2 in each segment, like this, filling each one up, I now have 1 bar of quarter note triplets. If I rewind to the beginning, let's hear it. That's what I was going for. Now, I could have played that in, but it would have been sloppy probably, and I would have had to quantize it. And then obviously, if you're not really used to this idea of, reading music or hearing a description, give me a bar, give me 4 bars of quarter note triplets. This is one way to accomplish it. I'm going to save that. I could just keep clicking and do 4 bars. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select this first bar still in the MIDI editor. Up here at the top, this top gray line, gray timeline, whatever that's called. I click there and drag, and I select the whole bar. And you can see up here, the clip is also selected. I'm going to do Option R, which is a shortcut for repeat. And I'm going to give us 3 more repeats because we need a total of 4. And now if I actually, oops, didn't mean to do that. If I go to the beginning and hear it, I'm going to hear the 4 bars. That's what we wanted. I'm going to save. Now, the assignment page is asking for 4 bars of eighth notes. That's missing missing an H, typo there. Eighth notes are technically not a tuplet. I think they're called a duplet, but let's not get all picky here. All right. Still got the pencil tool. I'm going to go up here to the grid, change it from quarter note triplets to eighth note, and I have to uncheck that little triplet thing because I'm not ready to do eighth note triplets yet. Now this math for me is a little easier because I'm dealing with numbers that my brain can handle. I know already, if I'm trying to do eighth notes, which I am, not only can we see that in bar 5, where we're going to start drawing our eighth notes, each quarter note is split in half. And it's showing, bar 5, beat 1, tick 0, bar 5, beat 1, tick 480. 480 is half of 960. So if for some reason you didn't know that and you needed to figure it out and you had a calculator that you knew how to use, that would be one way. But once again, this takes a lot of the fuss out of it. Now that I know that I'm going to be drawing in whatever the grid says, which in this case is an eighth note, I'm golden. I'm just going to go and make a nice little click in each segment with my pencil on the note that I want. I'm using the B flat 2. And let's hear that. That sounds more like a typical rock beat, doesn't it? Sounds more like music you would very commonly hear. I'm going to now, happy with that, repeat that. Option R, 3 repeats. Now we're going to have 4 measures. I'm going to start at bar 5. There you go. Save. Next, the assignment page is now asking for bars 9 through 12, 4 bars of 8 note. It's supposed to say eighth note with an H on the end. That's a mistake on my part. 4 bars of eighth note triplets. All right. Starting in bar 9, we're going to change the grid. Once again, we're going to keep the eighth note, but we're going to make it an eighth note triplet. And as soon as we do that, we can see that the grid has now changed. And the illustration is pretty good. You can see that this darker line is the main beat. So bar 9, beat 1. Now, instead of 640, which was the quarter note triplet, it's half of that because an eighth note is half of a quarter note. So in this case, we're dividing 960 by 3. And even with my math, I know that 960 divided by 3 is equal to 320, which is exactly how long each one of these segments is. Still got my pencil tool. I'm just going to draw once again. And by the way, let me show you another little trick. If for some reason I was doing a different rhythm, I wanted it to have this eighth note triplet feel, but I wanted one of the notes to be a quarter note, you can do that because all you would need to do is click and drag and fill up a whole quarter note, and then you'd have a quarter note. And you can see here that the picture of the note is longer. I'm going to undo that. What you can't do is draw something that's shorter than 320 with the grid on. It won't let you. And that's a strength of the grid. It just makes it really easy to do this. You just tap and create, this whole measure. My trackpad gets me kind of inaccurate sometimes. And I'm just drawing in, mistakes and all, the whole measure. And I'm going to have to zoom out just a little bit so I can see the rest of bar 9. Let's hear what that bar sounds like. I'm going to start right on bar 9, beat 1. Yeah, and it's kind of sounding like music there, right? I hope. I'm going to select that bar. It's very easy for me to just move the pencil the cursor up here, it changes from a pencil to that selector I-beam thing. And then up here, when you select it, you just click and drag. And the other nice thing about having the grid on is you don't have to be super accurate unless you get down to really small number of the grid. And then in that case you do, but we're not there yet. If you're ever wondering, do I have the right region selected? Well, I know, in fact, I didn't tell you, but every time I select a region, because I'm paranoid, I always go up here and make sure that I have exactly the region that I want. And usually it's going to be 1 bar or maybe 2 bars. Because typically, if I'm doing a repeated pattern like this, 4 bars of hi-hat, I'm not going to take the time to go in and draw every single bar of those 4 bars. I'll do 1 bar probably, and then select the region and repeat, because it's just more efficient that way. Saves some time. I always look at the length of my selection, and if it's exactly 1 bar, I know I've got the right selection. From bar 9 to bar 10, I'm done. Option repeat, 3 more of them, and we'll be set. Okay, almost done. The last thing that is required here is bars 13 through 16. 4 bars of 16th notes. Once again, this is not technically a tuplet. 16th notes, though, are a very common rhythm that you'll hear all the time. All right, so the same routine. I'm going to zoom in quite a bit more now because I need to be able to see all these smaller segments. You're going to see what I mean in a second. The grid is now going to be changed from 8th note triplets. I'm going to take that triplet off and change to 16th notes. And right away, you can see every quarter note here, instead of being split into 3, now it's split into 4. So that's why I kind of had to zoom in a little bit so I could see them. Because I've got this thing right here following the grid, it automatically changed to 16th notes. I like working that way if I'm using the pencil tool. Same deal. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I could keep doing that, but the same logic extends to this. Why draw out a whole measure? I have 1 beat. I could just select 1 beat, repeat it, Option R, 3 more times. Now I have a whole measure. I'm moving a little fast, but you can always rewind the video if you need to. Now that I have a whole measure, which let me confirm because I don't like to do anything before I listen to it. Sounding a little robotic, but yeah, it's there. We know where we're going with this. Now I select the whole measure, Option R, 3 more measures, and I believe we will have those 4 bars as well. All right. Just to completely confirm, because this habit of getting into quality control is something that I want us to be aware of. So starting at the beginning, I'm going to listen to the whole thing. Here we go. And 16th notes coming up. And a nice little ending note on the kick drum. Save. Basically, at this point, you are done. What you need to do is create a wave file of this. And I'm going to point out a couple things before we finish up. Had you wanted to play this in real time, you could. You would have obviously needed a click track, probably. Maybe not, because the kick and snare might cover it. If you have a click track in this or any other assignment for my class, or if you're just thinking about being a professional producer, I'm going to give you something. You probably want to take a note on this. Never send anything out with the click track sounding if you want somebody to listen to your music, because the click track is not part of the music. So that's something that we use as producers to make sure that when we're playing stuff in real time, that it's on the grid. But once you got your stuff done and you're kind of creating a mix, even if it's a rough mix, it doesn't matter. It's inexcusable to leave the click track as part of your audio mix. So always mute that. I'm going to unrecord enable this. If by any chance you need an audio reference, the assignment is telling you that there is one available, and you can hear what I did there. I already downloaded it, and you can do that too. It's here. It's called Tuplets Audio Reference.wave. You can download it, open up on your computer, and listen to it. It's a little different because I actually did some dynamics with that one, and we're going to deal with that, dealing with some dynamics, meaning velocity, in another lesson coming up. I thought this was enough for this one. Just wanted to get this idea of being used to pulse per quarter note and how it relates to the Digital Audio Workstation. So what you would do here is what we're pretty much always going to do for these kind of assignments. I'm going to select not all this extra stuff. For some reason, these clips ended up really longer than they needed to. If I go up here and kind of select everybody and a little extra. So we're starting at bar 1, beat 1, and maybe we have like a few extra beats. That's good. In order to submit this and to hear your mix, which is not much of a mix, it's just the 2 kicks that you imported plus this hat that you created. You go to the File menu, choose Export, and we're going to choose Audio Mix. Mine looks a little different than yours, but whatever your basic mix that you're using probably is what you want to use. We're going to stick with a WAV file. Yours probably up here, by the way, the mixdown source probably says outputs 1 and 2 or something similar to that. I'm on a slightly different system, so mine is not showing that. Yours is just probably going to default to the right one. WAV file, interleaved, whatever else is here is good. I'm not going to import it back into the session. What I am going to do is change the name of this file, and I'm going to use first initial last name tuplets plus the word mix. You could really put it anywhere you want. If you want to leave it into the bounce files folder where it's being backed up, that's fine. As long as you know where it is in case you want to find it. If you like, you can use, I got kind of a sloppy habit, but it works. I just change it and I click on the choose, and instead of this file where it's hidden somewhere, I'd rather just have it on the desktop because I know I need to know where it is. If I'm a student, I need to know where that thing is so I can submit it. I'm going to click Open. And now I can see it's going to my desktop. I'm going to click Export, and it takes a couple seconds. Always quality control. So before I'm done with anything, I want to go and open up that file. The quickest way for me to do that is just to double click on it, and on my computer, that defaults to opening it in iTunes. I'm not going to spend 45 seconds listening to it, but I want you to listen to the whole thing. In case some glitch got in there, never send anything out to me or a client or someone you're collaborating with without listening to the entire thing and making sure it's okay. So now you got your WAV file. The other part of this is I need to be able to see your session. So because it's kind of complicated for you to send me the session, the way we're doing it this semester is you're just going to take a video of this screen. You can take it with your mobile device. If you know how to use like, I don't know, QuickTime or some other app that you have on your computer that takes a video, that's fine too. As long as I can see it and hear it, it doesn't have to be great audio. So if you're, because the great audio is coming in from the WAV file, and that way I can hear if you've done it properly. But I also want to see how you did it in your session. In case there's any problems, I can see maybe the video and help you figure it out. I believe that is the end of this instructional video. Once you have those two things, the video and the WAV file, you're going to submit it to the assignment page, and just make sure you do it by the due date. In case there's any problems, then you will be able to revise it. This is Steve Roitstein saying adios.